All right, guys. All right. It's the Merc here. This is an impromptu session, an impromptu show. And I'm going to be doing these like once in a while. It's just me. Have Hope is currently engaged, so he's not available right now to be here. Just give me a second. I'm going to just do a few checks on my system. Let me do a few checks on my system here. Just want to make sure everything is going according to plan. Give me a second. Yeah. Okay, give me a second. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I think it's working. Just doing a quick check, guys. Bear with me. All right, it is working. What's going on here? So yeah, you're gonna just let me know if we've got any glitches or any issues, which I may or may not notice. Okay. So anyway, look, this is the reason why this is happening. I'm going to be touching on a lot of things, because I've had thoughts on like a lot of things going on in fandom these days, and I wanted to just get out there, just reach out and touch TALKBACK, see what guys are up to, and obviously give my views on a couple of very important topics. I was trying to get a co-host in here, but unfortunately everybody was kind of busy at this point, but I still just wanted to do this because I've got a very tiny window in which to talk. Anyway, let's just get into it, okay? First point of action. I want to ask guys, like, I don't know if anybody's seen the Dave Chappelle special. And you can see the screenshot that we have, the background image that I have up, which is very important because I think that this is an important image to be showing, because we've got a very strange thing going on, a very strange thing going on. Where I don't think I've ever seen a discrepancy as extreme between fans and critics as is happening with this particular special, this particular program. Whether it's a TV show or a movie or whatever, I don't think I've seen anything as crazy as this. I mean, you see what you're looking at there? You're looking at 99% to 25%, okay? At a point, it was 0%, And let me just even see. I mean, this is from 12 reviews. So, let me actually even pull up. Let me pull up what we're talking about here. So, this is from 12 reviews. Give me a second, because I have a theory about this. So, we're looking at Salon.com has left a review. Slate has left a review. Pajiba, Vanity Fair. So we've got some real, publications here, who've left some stuff here. And okay, I don't even know. I'm trying to think of the best way to begin with this. See, this is crazy to me. I saw this thing, and I knew that there was going to be some backlash. Like, I knew that there was going to be some controversy involved, because of the kinds of things he was willing to go and touch on. All right. When I then, when I watched it and everything, I was like, wow, this guy really didn't pull any punches. And I'm going to start off here. And I've said this to a few people already. I said, this is probably one of the best specials that I've ever seen. Not because it's the funniest. It is not the funniest special I've seen. Not by long shots, okay? It is not even his funniest special that I've seen. He's made funnier specials, He's made specials that I think were more hilarious and, that had more catchy jokes and so on and so forth. That's all good. And so have other comedians, okay? The thing about this is that you start asking yourself a question of, what is comedy? What are the funniest things? Like, when you think about what comedy is, or what the power of comedy is, where you're able to make fun of very serious things. And by seeing the funny side of things, you actually get more perspective of those things in question. That's what I believe. comedy is, or at least the power of comedy, right? Now, the question you've got to ask yourself if you're a viewer is, should any group or any person be exempt from being made fun of or from jokes being cracked about them? This is a very touchy subject because, look, I'm black. You have jokes that have been made about black people for centuries, for decades or whatever, that were tied very closely to acts of violence, deaths, murders, killings, and so forth, because it created sort of an idea of, or sort of re-emphasize that inferiority thing, all of that sort of stuff. So I'm very aware of that. But the thing about that, though, was those were done with the sole purpose of ridicule and attack. There was a malicious intent behind that kind of comedy. Would I now turn around and say that, going forward, black people or Africans or whatever should not be made fun of at all? No joke should be cracked about them? I mean, I wouldn't, that just wouldn't make sense, because as Dave Chappelle said in the special, normalization actually comes with being the subject of jokes and fun and humor. Because if you're too protected, then you are actually promoting the idea that you are other than. That's something that I actually agree with. I feel like when you get to a point that you're able to make fun of or make jokes about particular groups or particular things, that group actually starts becoming normal, because then we're all in it together. That being said, okay, 25% now to 99% is what I'm looking at. That is ridiculous. Okay? I mean, that is, and with only 12 reviews, I mean, you're looking at 25,705 audience reviews at 99%, which is unheard of. 12 critics, 25%. One of them is Jeremy Jans, who I happen to watch. He's a YouTuber, and I happened to watch his video where he was talking about how ridiculous it was that the rating was at a 0, and he was deciding that he was going to go forward and try and bump up the rating by giving it a review on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not something that he usually does. So he's one of the 2 or 3 positive reviews that this movie has had. Guys, I'm going to tell you what I think, okay? This is like a control thing, You have a situation where an industry is so used to being able to dictate what the audience or what people see, or rather what people think, and in turn what people see based on what they think, and what people therefore buy based on what they think and what they see, and then what they decide to purchase. What they put their support behind, who you vote for, who you praise, who you attack. It's a serious times, guys. It's a serious times. Because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, wow, I watched this thing and it was funny. I don't know how you'd watch this and not at least give it, say it's okay. Maybe you're not going to say it's like the greatest thing you've ever seen in your life, but at least you'd think it's like, oh, this is okay. But just the vociferousness with which some groups have attacked this thing, the fact that people are actually telling folks not to watch it, which is crazy to me, is very, in my opinion, very concerning. I mean, we're going to see what's going to happen, but I think what has indirectly been created out of this is a lot more fans of the special and of Dave Chappelle. A lot more people willing to support him now because of what is going on. It's delineated a clearer split between the industry and the audience at large, showing that there is disingenuousness to the criticism business. And I think that, is a problem. We'll see, I think, the irony is the fact that the guy, Dave Chappelle, actually spoke about cancel culture and people dredging up every little thing about your past when they don't like something you say, the irony of which this cancellation situation is exactly what people are trying to do to him. But I think the problem is that he's too famous. He's too successful. So you can't like take him down in a conventional sense because A, he's too successful, B, he's too famous, and C, which is like the weirdest thing, is that Dave Chappelle now suddenly got a whole bunch of right-wing fans, which is like the unintended result of this thing, is that he already had like a lot of liberals and like left-wing people, you know, who were already fans of his and so forth. He now has some hardcore right-wing people who have been pasting this show everywhere, talking about how amazing it is. This guy even has Breitbart praising it's Fox, network, everything supporting this guy. And that's like the problem with it is like, it's almost like the Incredible Hulk. The angrier he gets, the more powerful he gets. The Trump effect. The more you attack him, the more powerful he gets. Had you just left this alone, or had you just given it an average review, it would have probably sunk away and slithered away quieter. The problem is like, you can't give it a positive review because he's actually lampooning the falseness of society that we have, and the fact that people can't really truly express themselves. And listen, I'm saying this as somebody who, I don't necessarily agree with everything he said, There were some very interesting points, very interesting perspectives that he had. There were some things I didn't agree with, and I'll say one of them. One of the things I didn't agree with was the whole two-word thing where he had faggots and nigger, and he had those two words, and I'm not sure if YouTube is going to mess me up for that now with the algorithm. But he had those two words, and he talked about how you can say one, but you can't say the other, and that his boss or the person who was dealing with censorship or whatever told him that, listen, you're not gay, and then he said that I'm not XYZ either, not a nigger either. Now, the reality for me, which is why I say I don't really agree with his perspective on that, is she's actually sort of right, because what she's saying is, if you're in the group where the slur refers to that group, then it's okay for you to say it. So if a gay person wanted to use a gay slur in his comedy bit or comedy show, that's fine, because he's protected by the fact that he comes from that group. If a black person wants to use a black slur for an attack on, or for a comedy sketch or comedy bit on his situation, that's okay, because he's protected under the umbrella of belonging to that group. That's what I feel she really meant, and that sort of makes sense. I don't agree with any slurs being used. I don't agree with, black people using slurs against them. I mean, I think it's ridiculous, but that's a whole other conversation. However, I think he was sort of off the mark with that one. Because, the whole point is, if it's your group, you can say whatever you want to say about your group. When you're talking about a group that you don't belong to, using a slur about them then becomes a little bit more sensitive. That being said, I get the overall point, because yes, you could look at it from the standpoint of, at the end of the day, there is no barrier to black denigration in media and entertainment at all. There is no pushback for that. You could argue that. Anyway, that's that. So we'll move on from that topic. But if you have any thoughts, please post and subscribe. Because like I said, I'm going to be doing these every so often. Just musings whenever I have thoughts or whatever. I'll try and do them regularly and put them up here. The next thing, and I'm going to try and pull this up now. Give me a second. Let's see if I can pull this up. It is, let's see, Rambo Last Blood trailer. Okay. Okay, guys. I don't know about this, and if you're in Talkback and you've been on Talkback for years, I mean, look, Talkback goes back to 10 years ago, almost 12 years ago. Jeez, but we've been on and off, we've been in and out, been doing things. I don't know about this, I mean, I don't know, guys. Honestly, like it's one of those where I've got to be honest with you. Let me try and get this screen working properly. All right, I'm sorry guys, I'm just trying to fix my screen. I've got a little issue here, a little glitch. Anyway, yeah. It's just a very strange choice, should I say. I mean, look, there's always been the flirtation. Like, I've heard a lot about him saying that he was going to, this concept of cowboy and Mexico and blah, 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 has always been mooted. There was the thoughts, like I remember in the 90s or whatever, like people were talking about the idea that Rambo was actually part Native American or something. I remember something like that. But anyway, the idea of going in this direction was always there, bringing blah, 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 blah. I don't know about this, guys. I don't know. Like, I mean, look, there is the obvious controversial aspect of it that, you've got Rambo, a white guy, killing Mexicans at what looks like the border during a time where we have all this immigration situation going on and blah, 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 blah. So you're damn sure that you're going to get some pushback coming in from particular sections, who might be sensitive to that, That being said, I want to ask you folks who are listening, is there any excitement for this? And I'm look, I'm a Rambo guy. I'm a Rambo guy, and I actually feel like there hasn't actually been a bad Rambo movie, like bad, like where it's rubbish. The last one it was okay, it was good, like it wasn't, there was nothing wrong with it. But I've got to ask you the question that, is this a movie too far? I just want to know. I think it's a movie too far. I don't know if we need another Rambo movie. Not like this. Because in my view, I'm like, if you're going to make something and Rambo is trying to come home, the only way that I think this would work for me is if you went full circle. What does that mean? Any of you guys watch First Blood? And you're calling this Last Blood. It's got to go back to town. It's got to go back to town. That's what I think. Like, I think that the guy's got to go back to town. Try and maybe an attempt to reintegrate, or he's on the border, or wherever he is, and vestiges of people, the town is trying to mess him around or kick him off the land or something. That's the only, and listen, I'm not even saying that that's a great idea, but I feel it's the only way that I would be interested in seeing another. I mean, look, I'm gonna go and watch it. Obviously, it's Rambo. We go way back. However, I'm just being honest, because I watched the trailer and I'm like, yo, I mean, I don't even know what else to say. Let me have a look at this thing. I don't really know. Yeah, guys. I don't know. 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 You know what? Another thing that I really don't like, this whole thing of like playing on nostalgia, and focusing on like the old, like, I'm like, we get it, man. The only reason why we're even here is because we're fans of the old stuff. So you don't have to keep showing us the old things. We want to see, like, if you're back, we want to see something different. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the point. This is how I look at it, right? When First Blood Part 1 came out, right? Good movie. Part 2 came out, and it was so different from the first one, because the first one was just this urban, small, almost independent film, and the second one was this like crazy big, commando-esque all action fiesta, which ironically is the birthplace of so many films. Like, the number of films, I think that it created its own subgenre. Rambo First Blood Part 2, I think, created its own subgenre of movies. Of like the one-man killing machine who can't be stopped. Period. Then you had Rambo 3, which I thought was an excellent sequel. Very criminally underrated. If you've not seen Rambo 3, go and see it. The cinematography is beautiful. Fantastic cinematography. Score by Jerry Goldsmith, excellent again. Directing was quality. Acting was quality. It was the last time that Richard Crenna, Colonel Troutman was in a Rambo film. Gave it his best shot. And there's a joke that we have about this guy, like, Colonel Troutman's only job in every Rambo movie is to hype Rambo. He's like a hype man. Those rappers, right? When rappers go on stage and they have their hype guys in the back. That's Troutman's Rambo. Go and watch Rambo 3. Every single time this guy opens his mouth is to talk about how amazing Rambo is. The guy was captured being tortured. He wasn't even afraid because of Rambo. Because he knew Rambo was coming. And Rambo, what was that one called? It was just called Rambo, wasn't it? The Rambo 4. It was good. It was okay. I remember I watched that twice. It's all right. It basically, it didn't embarrass the franchise. And again, it didn't rely on nostalgia for it to work. And obviously, it was the first time that Troutman wasn't there. And I think the problem with that is that I feel that it wasn't different enough from the other movies for me to really embrace it the way that I had the other ones. Which is the reason why I say that if you're going to come back, it's got to be dramatically different. Like, it's got to do something completely different. I don't want to talk about nostalgia. I don't want to see nostalgia. Anyway, guys, that's my thoughts, So I'm going to leave that one, and just let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure to subscribe. More thoughts coming. But yeah, leave it at that. Next topic, and I'm just really buzzing through this now because there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on. Now, I'm a big video game guy. Been in video games most of my life. I started playing games like when I was about 7. No, you know what? Let me be real. I used to play this Donkey Kong. Was the first game I ever played, like video game I played, and that was when I was about 4 years old. So we're talking like early to mid 80s. And once I got into games, from the Nintendo Entertainment System, Commodore 64, Amstrad, Super Nintendo, Mega Drive, we've had everything going through the years. Bought every system of note. Gamed hardcore gamed. In fact, the only reason why I don't game as much in recent years is just life and work. Got to put food on the table, put money in the pocket. Gaming became a very toxic place with the advent of internet gaming and Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, and all that. once you could actually get into the minds of gamers, things became very toxic. Now, anybody who is other, and I always say that if you're not a white male, so you're a woman, you're black, you're Asian, you're African, you're whatever it is, you know what I'm talking about when I say the moment a group of people, when you're playing, especially things like Call of Duty, realize that you are other, the insults are almost instantaneous. The abuse, the racism, oh my God, it's shocking. And the thing is, like, let me be real. I was like, cool, I mean, I can mute them, I just have to look and mute, whatever. But part of me was always thinking that, why do we have to put up with this? Like, why isn't Xbox doing anything serious to deal with this issue? Because this is the thing, right? If you're a white guy playing games, you have no idea what I'm talking about, because you're never really dealing with things on that level. So for example, if somebody's going to diss you or like start insulting you, it will be based on other factors, maybe the way your voice sounds or something you did in the game, or you're not a very good player or whatever. But imagine like your very essence is the crux of the abuse, just what you are. That is the basis of the abuse. So, and listen, I've been a victim of this like every time I go on Xbox Live. I actually stopped playing on Xbox Live. I was like, this is a waste of my time. Literally, exactly, and there were particular games that this really blew up with for me, and they were typically first-person shooters like Call of Duty. Gears of War as well was a big culprit of this sort of stuff. Halo, not so much, surprisingly. It wasn't as bad. Call of Duty is like the worst. So I say all of this to say that, you have a situation, okay? You have a situation in the gaming world that was the hotbed or a petri dish for horrific behavior. And I say this as a veteran. I'm a veteran, of gaming. Like, there's no two bones about it. Like, I go back. And for people who don't know, I'm also a programmer as well. So I actually code. So I'm in the game. I have relatives who are in the gaming business, So I know what I'm talking about. It's festering with bad behavior. Festering. Okay? And the problem is, because it's the wild, isn't it? It was really the Wild West back in the day, but it's still the Wild West now. Because it was it's like there's no regulations for any of these things. And nobody really knew what video games were going to be in the 90s and then they really exploded in the 90s. Mid 90s was PlayStation, Super Nintendo, then PS3, Xbox, blah, 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 all of these things coming out, 360. You had so many crazy things coming out, So much success, so much money. Massive corporations being built, like Electronic Arts, Bungie, 343 Studios, Ubisoft. Massive, billions of dollars. Billions. So it's a big time game. People didn't want to rock the boat. It's almost like you even go back to the 80s during the big times. American Psycho, that movie American Psycho, which was skewering that era of avarice in the 80s. Like, whenever you have a boom in any industry, it's the Wild West. So I'm saying all of this just to preface and to lay a foundation for where I'm going with this, because a very, very dark and unfortunate thing happened in the gaming industry with Alec Oloka and ZOE QUINN. I don't keep tabs on this sort of stuff. Let me be real. I don't keep tabs. Because it's like the weight and just the negativity and just the toxicity of it is, to willingly engage is very difficult. But I've been aware of what's been going on with the abuse accusations and, the Me Too situation going on in the gaming industry and Gamergates and so forth. Now I'm going to say something about, look, RIP to Alec Oloka, the Night in the Woods developer who unfortunately took his own life within a week of the accusations coming out about him, from ZOE QUINN. Shocking allegations. I mean, I read the stuff she was saying and I was like, damn. Like, if this guy did that, that's pretty messed up. So, I don't think anybody who's reading that stuff, if you take it on face value, would say that that's appropriate behavior. It's criminal behavior. It's like this, there's no, it's the sort of situation that you've got to arrest the person. So let's just put that there. Point blank. The issue that I had with it though is like, and I'm going to sort of scale sort of my thoughts on this is, first of all, it's very unfortunate. Like I heard that the guy killed himself and I was like, wow, this story only just broke. That was my first instinct. I was like, this has happened too quickly. Like, it's within days. Like, people hadn't even had time to digest the accusations and figure out what was going to happen. And he was just gone. Then there was a lot of background information that came out, that this guy suffered from a lot of mental issues and he'd spoken about them. Then I started doing my own research and watching his videos and seeing that the guy had spoken about his problems, medication, therapy, the games that he'd actually been working on sort of reflected on those same issues. And I mean, I want to be, let me see. Sensitivity. There's multiple levels to stuff like this. I think whether or not you believe stuff, I think you've got to look at the appropriate methods that you would go down to deal with them. Obviously, we live in a particular time now where we have a lot of hysteria, a culture that is addicted to likes, tweets, shares, retweets, followers, number of followers, where those things have actually become currency. They're currency. We know what people do for money, and what people do for currency. So when that becomes currency, it's a dangerous environment. And this is not actually to do with this particular issue, but to do with like just the wider societal malaise that exists. I think what I'm interested in knowing from people who might be watching this and people who are familiar with this particular situation is, was this the best way for the accuser to put this information out if justice is what you seek above all else? Was this the best way? Compounded by the fact that there is an awareness that the person who's being accused has mental issues. I'm just asking, I mean, because this has nothing to do with guilt or innocence at this point. And I'm going to go into that as well. Was this the best way? Because at the end of the day, it's like there is no coming back now. Because there's no coming back. And if you're aware that somebody has, and listen, that we have documented evidence that, he'd talked about suicide, before, and she was aware of that. So listen, I'm going to say something else that, might not be popular with some folks. I actually believe her, though, ZOE QUINN's accusation. Like, I sort of believe it. Like, I'm just like, well, if you read everything, you're like, based on what his sister said, the fact that he's talked about having issues, you read that and you're like, maybe he was just having a psychotic episode. What, we don't know. And I'm just saying this based on just my opinion, my objective opinion, is that, based on the history and everything we know, the story she tells doesn't sound like it could be complete nonsense based on everything else we know. And the reason why I'm saying that is that I don't want the idea to be the dismissal of an accuser's accusation. I think that that's not productive for anybody, especially if you've been the victim of something that nobody wants to believe, blah, blah. It's not a good place to be where people just throw it out the window. And I know people are going to bring up that, listen, she does have a history of falsehoods and blah, blah, whatever. I'm just saying that due process is paramount. And for due process to exist, I feel the culture that we now have of putting everything on social media first kills the opportunity for due process, because everybody thinks they're powerful now. Everybody thinks that my ability to cancel somebody or to put a tweet out is everything. And when you in your life feel inadequate, feel unhappy, feel sad, feel angry, there is a certain amount of pleasure that's derived from pulling somebody else down, attacking somebody who you deem lesser than yourself. And I always call this the pebble theory. You see, if you get a bucket of water, right, and you drop one pebble in the bottle of water, it's just one pebble, makes a ripple and it goes away. That's the way you think of your tweets or your Instagram. You just put that pebble in there. You feel good for that moment, you go along with your day. Now, if 10 people drop 10 pebbles, the water shakes even more. What if 100 people drop pebbles in a bucket of water? What if 1,000 people drop pebbles in a bottle of water? There'll be no more water left in the bucket. They'll just be pebbles. And then the pebbles will become everything. They become truth. They become the bucket. And you forget that there was ever water in the bucket in the first place, because all you see is pebbles. You know what? I actually like that analogy. I'm going to keep using that one because I think it sums up what the hell is going on in social media and cancel culture as a whole. We forget that very quickly you forget there was water in the bucket to begin with. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, you know what? It's very easy for all the people who created these pebbles to just disappear when this poor guy kills himself. Why do you run away? Like, you were bold enough to do it. Like, you should stay there. Stand on your opinion. Stand on what you said. And my thing is this, is like, I don't feel it is directly her fault that this happened. It was a contributing factor, that's for sure. Because if you didn't go to Twitter and social media first, the ability for the general public to lynch this guy in public off the bat wouldn't have existed. It wouldn't have existed. However, I think the people who are blaming her for this thing, I'm just like, come on, guys. I mean, in all honesty, like, if he was dealing with stuff like this, it's possible at some point this was going to happen for some other trigger. Something else was going to trigger him. Unfortunately, it was this. However, I think what has happened does force us to have a deeper conversation about how dangerous trial by media and cancel culture is, because within a week, this guy lost his job, lost his reputation, lost his everything within days without any evidence being presented to people. Nothing. Now, I'm saying that the guy could very well be guilty. And when I looked into the background, I'm like, if I saw all this information and then somebody brought out an accusation, I'd be leaning towards, he probably did it, but let's figure out if it was an insanity thing or like a mental thing. Because remember, and this is something that people should think about very carefully, if he's diagnosed as having a disorder, a mental disorder, if he went to court for those charges, he could actually get off on the consideration that he was having a psychotic episode. And then he would be remanded to a mental institution or something, or treatment or something like that. He would get off due to diminished responsibility due to mental issues. Think about that. That's the reality. So even if all the stuff is true, by virtue of the fact that the guy had psychological problems, it's still possible that the state and the law would look favorably on his situation and say, listen, you know what? It's a crime. You abuse this person, but you have psychological things, so we've got to treat you. Could have happened. Anyway, look, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but it was just a very sad thing. I saw it, and I hope that we will take a deeper look at ourselves as a society. This is not about innocence or guilt. This is about due process and about giving everybody a fair shake. I don't understand this mentality that you go straight to Twitter and social media with accusations this serious. People said, oh, because, people don't ever believe. I'm like, they'll believe this person because she's known and already has had these issues happen. Second of all, that is how this works. You don't make the decision that, the authorities won't listen to me, so I'm going to be that's vigilante justice. Do you want vigilantes? It's the same concept. That's the reason why. If you believe somebody attacked your family member and you go there with a gun and shoot them in the head for killing one of your family members or whatever, what do you think is going to happen to you? You're going to go to jail for murder. And what if you find out that that person wasn't actually the person who did it? You're screwed. And you just killed somebody who's innocent. That is basically an extreme example of what we're dealing with here. This is like vigilante justice via Twitter, via tweets. Shouldn't be happening. Shouldn't be happening. Anyway, we're going to see what the aftermath is going to be for the gaming in society, and we'll just keep watching and keep seeing what's going to happen. Oh God, wow! I mean, I don't even think I'm going to get through all of these topics, but next topic, Star Wars. I think this deserves its own show. I think I'm going to do its own thing. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow and do it. But I'm just going to put some thoughts out there about Star Wars and Terminator. I think each of those deserve their own hour per thing. So maybe I'll be back tomorrow to do Star Wars, and then I'll do Terminator on Monday. But anyway, I'm just going to touch on it a little bit. Star Wars. There's a very, 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 very controversial point I want to make. And I think I'll make it in the full-on show. But the controversial comment is going to... This is what the show is going to be about. So you can tune in tomorrow when I talk about it. But I want to ask the question. Are white middle-aged men the most important Star Wars fans? That's the question. What say you? Actually, you know what? I'm going to talk about it now. Are white middle-aged men the most important Star Wars fans? The reason why I say this is very simple. It's all about your base. So we've seen a lot of attacks. Listen, I'm obviously not a white middle-aged man. I'm a white, almost middle-aged black guy. I don't consider myself the most important Star Wars fan. And my goodness, am I a Star Wars fan? It's beyond fandom. Like, Star Wars is like everything for me up to a point. I'm not into any of the new stuff that's been coming out. There's the prequels I didn't like either. But regardless, Star Wars has always been my thing. I still do not believe myself to be as important to the franchise as white guys. They are the engine of the franchise, of the fandom. Like, literally, if it wasn't for that group, Star Wars wouldn't be here. That group is their energy, their money, their fanship, their obsessiveness, their geekishness on Star Wars is the reason that franchise became what it became in the first place, and is still and was around long enough to turn into the juggernaut that it's turned into. And they are literally the engine of the franchise. They were 12-year-olds when Star Wars came out. 9-year-olds, 7-year-olds. They're now in their 40s, late 40s. They have kids. Some of them have grandchildren. If I was going to give any advice to anybody making these things, don't attack white middle-aged guys. Don't. There's just no point. There's a way of getting more fans, being more inclusive of blacks, of Asians, of women, and all this sort of stuff without making your base, your core, the enemy. Like, I don't understand. You can't win that way. Like, you can't. Like, because I look at it, I'm like, the proof is in the pudding, where you go online, and I'm like, listen, it is just not a smart move. It's the same thing that happened with Ghostbusters, because that same group are the engine room of the Ghostbusters franchise, hands down. So if you don't make them comfortable and then build on that, and it's the way I always talk about, it's like politics. Secure your base. Say what you've got to say, do what you've got to do to secure your base, even though in the back of your mind you have your real objectives. You know what I'm saying? Just secure the base. Get elected. Get the votes. The issue now is that you're not securing your base. White guys are your base for Star Wars. Period. If I was making a Star Wars movie, like, you think about those guys first, secure that base, and then it's incremental over a long period of time. It doesn't happen like that, where you're going to take Star Wars and turn it into something else, because they're not the fan base. So all these groups that you're trying to go for aren't the reason why it is what it is today. And there's a lot of Star Wars fans who may not even be willing to admit to the fact that they feel marginalized, because it is not a popular thing to say that you feel marginalized because your image and yourself is not front and center or important or being lauded in the franchise that you love. And listen, I'm just saying it because I'm not a white guy, so it's easy for me to say. You know, a lot of white guys might come on, and I've seen all the videos on YouTube, and they'll be afraid to say it because they don't want to seem racist or misogynist or so forth. I don't actually view it that way, because I said this about Avatar, and I said this about James Cameron as well. I said, listen, you know, at the end of the day, James Cameron is a visionary, right? And so is George Lucas, and they see themselves in their characters. They're white guys. So when they make characters, like, there is an aspect of themselves that they see, and their fantasies of being the hero and being, that they put into, and that's the reason why they work so well, is because Kyle Reese, for example, there are elements of, or whatever you want to call it, any of these characters, there's elements of them in it. They're not trying to attack people or be disrespectful or whatever. It's like, that is where it comes from. So even if James Cameron was able to create some of the best female, I mean, Ripley is one of the best female heroes of all time, in my opinion. Like, I think alien movies because of what Ripley did and Sigourney Weaver, an alien movie without a woman as the lead is weird to me. It's just weird. It just doesn't work. Because he was able to create a situation where I believed that the dangers she was under were exacerbated because of her femininity. She wasn't trying to be a tough guy. She wasn't trying to be anything other than a woman in a very extraneous situation. And that created serious tension, especially when she's like the only survivor. It's great. So I say this because I feel like we're in a crazy time where it's like, it seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm like, listen, secure your base for the first, like, when you bring this stuff back. And then begin to, like, feed in. You know, you want to push more female characters. You want to create more black. Just feed that in. And once people are used to things, it will naturally evolve. I think it's a mistake. And we're seeing the results of the mistake, you know, with everything that is happening now. With the, you know, we've got a Star Wars movie coming out that a lot of fans don't care, you know, and it's unfortunate because there's just no interest. It's like, who are you rooting for? Who are you waiting to see? Whose story are you waiting to see how it pans out? No one. I don't even know what the story is. So if you say in episode 9, I'm like, what thread am I following? I don't know. The First Order, what do they want? I don't even know what they want. What do they actually... It is ridiculous. I don't know who Rey is. I don't know what the relationship is with Kylo Ren. I don't know who Snoke was. I don't know why the Emperor is back. I don't know anything. You know? So that is the way it is. And I just wanted to put out that question because I think it's a very important question that needs to be asked. Because I actually do believe that, you know what? Don't disrespect your base. You know, it's obviously because I'm black, like in my interests, of course I would love to see great black characters in Star Wars. Obviously, I mean, this was a natural thing. You want to see yourself. But I don't feel like I should be getting that at the expense of the image of the people who bloody created the thing. Like, I'm like, why? Now, like, in my view, it just seems strange. Like, there's no need for that. It's like, look, I'd rather, like, we just make our own thing. You know? Just no brainer. It's like, oh, cool. You know, just gotta make something else. And, like, the lead in that is just organically more. Because the reason why I say this is that, listen, Lando Calrissian just organically was in Star Wars. So if Lando now had his own movie, nobody would actually really say anything. Like if there was a Lando movie, nobody's complaining because he was integrated organically into the thing that based on what people like already. And that's what I feel needed to happen. Like, okay, look, we've talked about Rey 1,000 times, and I feel like Rey's issues come from a lot of places, like character development, the fact that she's flawless, she has no weaknesses, she can do everything, doesn't need anybody. It creates a very boring character. It's like, you know, there's no point in watching. There's no tension, there's no intrigue, there's no mystery, there's no intensity. It's just nothing. It's like, you know, just watching Commando just go from point A to point B and just lay waste to everything. There is no growth. And I think that's problematic. And I just realized that I've still got my Rambo thing up and I'm talking about Star Wars, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Terminator, I think I'll leave to another day as well. But thanks for listening, and we will be back, or I'll be back here